Hey everyone, welcome back. On this Crime Couples episode, we are looking at a honeymoon disaster. Newly married George Smith goes missing while on his honeymoon trip in the Mediterranean cruise. No evidence, nothing, potentially lost at sea.
So George Smith was born October 3rd, 1978 in the New England states. He went to school at Babson College where he got a degree in graphic design. His family was very affluent and they were very well liked in the community. He had a very good upbringing. He played a lot of sports, had a lot of good friends, and to this day his friends say that he was just a great guy, great humor, and he was well liked. He was also a ladies' man, so he had no shortage of girlfriends. But he did meet his future wife, Jennifer Hagel. She was a teacher in the nearby surrounding community, and people say they hit it off. They were set from the start. So they got married in New Hampshire in late June 2005. And all accounts say that it was a fairy tale wedding. They spent a lot of money on it. They got a lot of gifts. George even got a Breitling watch that he wore on the cruise. So the family was very affluent. They got a lot of money, and we'll discuss later, was this a part in his disappearance? So after their fairy tale wedding, like most couples, they planned a beautiful honeymoon for them to just relax and party and have a good time. So they said that they really liked the European countries, so they decided to do a 12-day Mediterranean cruise. Okay, so anybody who has been on a cruise, you're on this ship with, 2,000 to 5,000 passengers, and even though there's that many people, you tend to make friends because you congregate in areas, and people, keep going back there, keep going to the same machine, keep going to craps, go to the same dinners, and you run into people and you make friends. So Jen and George were very outgoing. They had a lot of friends and they attracted a lot of people. So they had met a couple named Paul and Galena, and they were seen with them throughout the cruise. And then they also had a group of 4 boys. So Zach and Jeff Rosenberg were brothers. They had their cousin, Greg Rosenberg, and then a Rusty Kaufman, which was Greg's friend. And those were the 4 Russian Americans. And then there was also Josh Askin. He was an American college student from California. So we're just setting the stage. These are people that are going to be spoken about as the story goes on.
So as they take off on this wonderful adventure that they're getting ready to start for their honeymoon, they actually, the departure of it was going out of Spain. So they actually went to Spain, spent a few days there before the cruise actually set forth. Once on the cruise though, they had all these wonderful destination points. So they went to the French Riviera, Santorini, all these beautiful spots in the Mediterranean. One in particular that George was really excited about was going to the island of Mykonos in Greece. And Greece was he loved the whole Greek culture and everything about it, the food, the different alcohol, the wines and stuff. So he's a really big fan of it. So he was really excited for that day. That day comes up, which was day 5 of the cruise.
Which is July 4th at this point.
July 4th. They get off the ship, they go to explore. Now Jennifer and George had set up a whole day, events, different things, excursions, whatnot, just them 2 planning it. And so they had a lot of fun. He was excited. They ran into a celebrity star, Tara Reid, which he
actually has a picture that we're going to try to find and put up for you. I thought that was really cool.
And so, super excited. He was, had a lot of fun that day, Jennifer said.
And they were drinking all day, though.
They were drinking all day. Of course, they were trying the culture of that, and they're indulging. And really, previously, neither of them have been known to be big drinkers. And not able to handle their alcohol well. I think some people had said George would have a couple and kind of be blissed out of his mind kind of deal. So, that's the kind of people that were coming into it. Now, they are drinking consistently throughout the day. I imagine they're eating. Day cap kind of ends though. They go to have a romantic dinner at Chop's Grill, which is, one of the
fancier steakhouses on the ship.
And this, I don't know if we mentioned already, but this is the Royal Caribbean.
The Brilliance of the Sea.
Brilliance of the Sea. So this is a pretty popular ship. I mean, I've heard of it, never even been on the Royal Caribbean, and I'm familiar with the name of it. So they go, of course, they're having more wine, they're drinking more with their dinner. They have a really good dinner, like I said, real romantic. They were really into gambling and being on the casino level, in the after hours of this. So some of the people, the older people or whatnot, are starting to wind down for the night. They're going out, they're joining the younger crowd. So,
and this was around midnight. I think they had dinner around 6:30, hung out there for a little bit, had some drinks, and around midnight, they headed to the casino.
Right. They actually went back to their stateroom first. He dropped off his sport coat. They headed off. Now, they went to two different directions when they got to the casino because he did prefer craps. And
she liked blackjack.
She liked blackjack. So at this point, George had actually met up with one of the other fellows, Josh Askin, and he had apparently been teaching him how to play craps. So they went off in their own direction there. Like I said, Jen was doing her blackjack deal. And from that point...
Is this when they went back to the room and were taking shots of absinthe?
Oh, yeah. So that is... they ended up going back to the room.
Josh's room. Yeah,
so they had got some absinthe, which is a hallucinogen. So it can... And again, they've been drinking all day, so this is just adding to that. So they took a few shots of this, apparently. Josh and George grabbed some extra cash to go gambling with and headed back down to the casino. They stayed down there, continued to be at the casino till like 2 or so.
2:30.
When the casino closed down.
And at that point, Jen and George were still talking, but they were kind of doing their own thing. And Jen was seen talking to an older couple. Later, they were questioned about this evening, and they said Jen did not appear to be super intoxicated. So she wasn't taking absinthe, and it was just more the Russians and George. So they were...
Yeah. And they said she made sentences. She wasn't stuttering or falling over, which is an important key when we get later down into the story.
So this is around 2:30 in the morning.
Right.
Which is later than I would stay up anyway.
Yeah. But after anything after 10, I'm probably not game for it. So at this point, they went up to the top level of the ship, and they went to the disco, which is what it's called, which I always keep finding weird because disco is a different term. But they went up there and continued to party on. So they continued to drink. They brought the absinthe with them, I believe. So they kept on doing shots of absinthe.
I don't know. Hard liquor shots. I mean, Harrison, you know what happens when I drink hard liquor shots. It doesn't go over well, even one or two.
Yeah.
And they are drinking and drinking and drinking all day.
And there's some different reports, and and things were originally said and then kind of not said. So I don't know, but there was a conflict that happened between George and Jennifer at some point, and no one really knows exactly what started or what happened. And some reports have said, she kind of kicked him and then ran off. Someone said she just got mad and ran off. Either way, Jennifer ended up leaving before George and the other guys decided to leave.
And there were a few witness accounts that said there was a gentleman named Lloyd, and he was the manager of the disco, I believe. And the casino. So he was down there. I don't know if he was off work or if he was enjoying himself, but he still is a crew member on this cruise ship and should be carrying himself in that manner. So people on the cruise ship said that Lloyd had been seen putting his arm around her, that Jennifer was flirting back. So did George get mad about this, or were they fighting about something else? So, we did work it out, and we did kind of look into it. It was later documented that Lloyd actually went back to his girlfriend's room, who was a crew member as well, and they did not leave together.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the disco is closing. It's around 3:30 in the morning, and they had been drinking for over 12 to 15 hours. So they're all pretty intoxicated.
And the food has kind of gone away out of their stomach by this point, I'm sure. Really digested.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you imagine eating dinner at 6 p.m. and now it's 3 in the morning and you still continue drinking, but you're not consuming any food? So I guess George was kind of like slumped over in a chair, just, not really doing good. And Jennifer is not in the disco at this point. So they assume she's back in the room, she made it back, whatever. So the men help George. They said they carried him under his arm back to the room. And the key card from Royal Caribbean noted that they went back to the room, I think it was like 352 or 354. And they were on the 9th floor. So it was the top level of the passenger staterooms. So they opened the door at 354 and recognized Jennifer is not in the room. So they had all decided, hey, let's go back and look for her. It's 4 in the morning. She's not in the room. Is she okay? So they all go out, search for Jennifer, and they said that they looked in the solarium, and within 6 minutes, the key card was back in the room at 4:01.
They didn't do a very extensive search.
So I don't know if they thought 6 minutes seemed like 30 minutes, but I mean, they didn't look really hard for Jennifer. So they get back to the room at 4:01. They say they put George to bed, and then they went all back to their room and ordered room service. So they were very specific about what they ate. They didn't remember who ordered it, what time it came, but they did remember eating tuna sandwiches.
Who the hell? First off, let's just make something really, really clear.
I don't like tuna any time of the day.
I actually like tuna, okay? But there is a zero chance that when I'm hungry, I want some mushed up fish with mayonnaise.
Especially on a cruise ship. I mean,
that
what
is
kind of quality tuna are you
the worst
getting?
idea that I could possibly think of after a night of drinking.
Yeah, no. So this was the end of the night. George was in his room. Jennifer was who knows where. And the Russians and the American went back to the room and ate room service. Okay, so now we are at day 6, and they are in the port of Turkey. Everyone's waking up. It's around 7:30 in the morning, and a 16-year-old girl, Emily Rausch, steps off on her balcony and looks down. And she is kind of like an amateur photographer. She loves taking pictures. And she's taking pictures and looks down, and I think she was on the 4th floor and they were on the 9th. She looked down and there's a canopy and then there's lifeboats underneath it. And on that canopy is what appears to be blood. And it's a pretty large area. So someone just didn't get a bloody nose and drop a few drops. I mean...
Yeah, and so me and Ashley have our own kind of like different feelings about this, because of all the stuff that we've like read and watched and different things, no one is addressing this.
And I'm a nurse, so...
And I'm not a nurse.
But the amount of blood that was on this awning has to be linked to some sort of like head injury or cut or stab wound or something. And I mean... Because
when we get back and look into it, they say that George fell
overboard
off his balcony
and drowned.
hit this awning, and then went into the water. So it's like a 21-foot drop.
Yeah, which is high.
Yeah,
and you can get hurt. But what caused all the blood? When they searched his room that next day, they didn't show any signs of foul play. I mean, there was like 2 little blood spots on the sheet, but there was no evidence that someone was hit over the head. There was no blood splatter. There was no cast off. I'm not sure if there was a weapon in the room, but it was known that they had a lot of money. And that was a theory circulating on the cruise ship. They were very open and loud and very, very sharing about the amount of money they had on the ship. And George had a Breitling watch, which, can be up to like $6,000 that he got as a wedding present. So there's just so many inconsistencies with this. And we've talked about cruise line disappearances and looked those up, and there's just not enough laws surrounding it because there's so many jurisdictions and nobody wants to dip their toes in, and they're getting in front of this agency and like, who has jurisdiction? Where was the ship at the time he fell off? Nobody knows. So Emily's out there taking pictures. She sees this giant blood spot. She goes to tell her parents, and there was a loud speaker. They went up and went to George's room, and over the loudspeaker they said, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, please report back to your room or come to the authorities.
Because at that time there was nobody in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, there's nobody in the room.
There's nobody in the room. So I don't know. Jen was up till 4 o'clock in the morning, but she woke up to go to a spa appointment. It was a previously scheduled one at 8 o'clock. I don't know about you, but if I'm drinking and partying till 4 a.m., I am not getting up for that 8 o'clock spa appointment. And
so also, I want to touch on this real quick. We mentioned that they went back out the night before to look for Jen because she wasn't in the room. So they actually found her, a crew member found her asleep in the
like
hallway.
An alcove.
Yeah, it was on the same level that her room was in.
Mm-hmm. Just down the hallway a little bit more.
The wrong direction. So kind of find out, when she went to go back up to the room, she was stumbling kind of all over the place. Now, mind you, at 2:30, as Ashley said, prior, the older couple had said she seemed fine. Well, it progressed aggressively to a point where she says she has zero recollection of what happened. She does not remember the night before, does not remember.
And to this day, she still holds that true. Like, she says, I don't remember.
So she ends up stumbling down the wrong direction of her hallway. She gets lost, ends up passing out, falling down the ground, falling asleep. They wheelchair her back to the room.
And then at 8 a.m., she wakes up to go to the spa appointment. So loudspeaker, Jen goes to the authorities and said what's going on, and they can't find George. So where's George at this point? So when Jennifer first went to the authorities, she said, I'm not really worried. He's probably with Paul and Galina or the Russians. And I guess he had spent one night previously on this cruise in another room. I don't know if it's from drinking or whatnot, but she didn't think this was abnormal. Okay, so they are unsure where George is. So they notify the Turkish police and the U.S. consulate. They do board the ship, go into the room, gather a very minute amount of evidence, and then they release the room to the cleaning crew. So they gathered what they could, and they did note that George had suffered from depression and panic disorder. He did take Zoloft and Klonopin to help stabilize his mood swings and anxiety. But they also noted that, his family and Jen said his depression was under control. He was by no means suicidal. So, they kind of chalked that off right at the beginning. So they're doing their investigation, and they have to look into these, 4 Russians and this California surfer boy. So they were conducting polygraphs, and Jennifer passed hers with flying colors. But there are some contradicting events saying that Greg Rosenberg, didn't pass his attorney said he did, but then the FBI said that he failed off the charts. So the lawyers did request that the boys invoke their Fifth Amendment right when speaking about George. So while still questioning the boys, their stories all seemed very consistent. They said, we were partying, we were at the casino, we went to the disco, we drank, we went back to the room, couldn't find Jen, went to go find her, we put George in his room, we went back to our room and ate room service. So they looked into these with the cameras, made sure everything matched up. They did look at the key card, and George's room was swiped at 3:54 and then at 4:01. But the room service that they allegedly got, they said that they ordered boatloads of food and they were so hungry and whatnot. The investigators did look into this, and if someone ordered that much food at 4 a.m., I think the staff in the kitchen remember making that. I know if I was kitchen staff at 4 a.m., I'm probably tired, and you get a large order of like 20 things. I think I'd remember it, and I'd be pretty pissed off. I'd be like, what the hell is going on with these people? So the cruise ship states that there was no log, that there was any food ordered from room service, and that there was no delivery of any food. And
no one remembers delivering it.
No one. And so this was the log that they looked at, and then they physically went to the kitchen workers, and everyone denies that happening. So what happened with this room service, and why was it part of this elaborate story? So, I mean, they did say that there were calls from Josh Askin's room, but we're not sure who they called, and it sure as heck wasn't room service.
So as the Turkish police and their CSI crew start doing their investigation process and going through questioning people on board the ship, there is a neighboring room to George and Jennifer's who comes forward to start talking about the events of that night from what he experienced. His name is Cleet Hyman, and he is actually a chief of police over in California.
And he's on vacation.
Trying to be on vacation as best as he can. He got awakened about 4 a.m. From what he's described as being like party drinking games and
like cheering,
like banter and stuff like that. So he said that was a loud noise. They're being loud and rowdy, and that kind of quickly turned into what seemed to be like an argument of some sort. Back and forth talking. He said not necessarily like angry and whatnot, but like a disagreement. He heard a lot of commotion. He said it transferred from like the room, sounded like it went out into the balcony, back into the room, right? And he said he heard, and then he had like a moment of silence. Like it was just quiet for like 3 to 5 minutes or something. So after this point, he thought hopefully it was all done. And then he said it just ramped back up again. It sounded like people were moving furniture, turning furniture over, opening and closing drawers, like someone was rummaging, trying to look for something or put stuff away, but very, very, very loud.
At 4 a.m.
At 4 a.m., yeah. So eventually this calmed back down a little bit too. And then what came after that point, he said, was like a horrific thud, loud noise. And a lot of people believe this was what he was hearing as George Smith's body went over and hit the canopy. He said it was a horrific noise and it was very loud. And then shortly after that, he heard the door opening and close of the stateroom. And at this point, obviously, his interest is extremely piqued. He pokes his head out of his room and looks down the hall, and he only sees 3 guys walking the opposite direction from him. Now, mind you, in the report that's given by the Russians and Josh Haskins, all 4 of them were in there. So 3 of the Russian boys and Josh Haskins were in there. However, when leaving, this police officer said, I only saw 3 people walking away.
And this is not just a normal civilian person. He is trained. He's an investigator. He's a chief of police. He can see, how many people are leaving. So did that 4th person, was he like right behind another person, or was he still in the room?
Or some people said that maybe he left prior and was quiet about it and went and made the call for the room service as like an alibi, right? So there's different things.
And there's a lot of cameras on cruise ships, and we have searched and scoured and watched documentaries, and I feel like the footage is just very...
We only have some of it. We only have like little bits and pieces of what they want us to see.
Where are the rest of the footage?
We should be able to see the guys walking away, right? We should be able to see where they went into the room with George, where they had left the room with George and went back to the room.
There's no footage of that.
There's nothing that's released to the public. And I feel like that would shed a lot of light as to who was there, where, things that happened.
If these stories that these guys say were really accurate, do they add up?
So after Cleet Hyman had said all this, so George and Jennifer's room was 9062. They were staying in 9066. All these noise and complaints like this were later confirmed by the neighboring,
the guest on the other
side of George's room, which was 9060.
They basically said, "What did you hear? Did you hear anything?" And their story matched up directly with Cleet Hyman, who was their other neighbor.
Now, Cleet actually did call the security and said, "Listen, I'm putting in a noise complaint. This is ridiculously loud."
He didn't think that anything.
They just thought they were partying,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So they did come up and check the room. They didn't get up there till like 4:30ish, and they said, at that point it was quiet, and so they didn't even bother. They didn't bother. They didn't hear anything.
I don't think they can just enter the room.
They can't.
Yeah.
They said
unless
it was completely
you hear
quiet.
Something.
So at that point they just left and figured they'd die down.
Yeah.
So the Turkish police did do their investigation. They brought in their CSI unit. They did their fingerprints and took some samples and photographs. They really didn't find anything. In a relatively short amount of time, they released the crime scene and let the cleaning crew of Royal Caribbean come in and clean the room, which a lot of people think is a mistake.
And they cleaned the balcony or the canopy where the blood was.
And they said, some people said it looks like it was painted over. Like, it's just really weird. And they should have taken that and given it as evidence.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
So they're in Turkey at this point, and Jennifer has no idea where her new husband is, and she doesn't have anyone on that cruise ship. So they just kick her off the ship and say,
pretty much, here's your gravy. Have a good time in Turkey.
Get it? Gravy in Turkey? I thought it was pretty funny. Okay, so they let her off the cruise ship with basically nothing. And, the money, we still haven't found out where that money went, if she's missing anything, whatnot. So they get her off the cruise ship, and she has to call her dad to wire money for her to fly back home. Like, the cruise ship just said, "See you later. We're setting sail."
They just took off.
They went right to Santorini. It's like, what the heck?
And so now she's in this foreign country. Her husband's missing, lost at sea. Apparently, they pronounced him dead, lost at sea. That's what they did. She has no money, nothing, and she's given all of their belongings. So she has like their bags. Actually, I think the clothes that she was wearing were taken in. So she was given like a Royal Caribbean shirt. Like,
and some shorts. Here you go.
Let me advertise for you. It kicked me off in this foreign country after my husband just died.
Okay, so the cruise ship does not stop. It continues to take off and set sail. And they said, wow, some of the passengers were kind of distraught and upset. Like, the party just went on. And these Russians and this American...
Which I get. Like, I get that you have 2,000 other people that are on this, and they paid an obscene amount of money for it. And I've actually been on a cruise where we left out of a port, someone had a heart attack, and they had to have like medical transport, and they had to bring another boat to bring them back to where they were at that port. It sucks. Like, it's a really weird, like, personal, ethical, battle, but the ship had to keep going because it does. But the way the crime scene is handled and the evidence that was given over and the process of what it was done, that's where we believe, and a lot of other people believe, it was just not timely. It was not done properly.
Right. So the ship sets sail and everyone goes on with their business. So these boys continue to get in trouble, and they were loud, obnoxious,
The Russians.
There was even an account where an 18-year-old girl was, drugged or doped up on alcohol.
Intoxicated.
Yeah. But she ended up back in that Russian American's room, and he supposedly assaulted her and raped her.
Well, apparently all of them did. It was said it was
and they videotaped it. So on July 10th, all these boys and their family were kicked off the ship. But when they went to authorities, they did not do anything because they said while they were on the water, the crime happened and it was not their jurisdiction. So these boys may have gotten away with murder and rape and who knows what else.
Out of all of the Russian boys that were aboard this, one in particular was Chatterbox, if you will. Some of the other ones took the fifth. Greg Rosenberg actually talked quite a bit, and he was really suspicious over a lot of times. So he was one of the ones who had questionable polygraph as well. when he was looked at, his story wasn't really adding up. There was a lot of overwhelming stuff that he was like.
He had a lot of points of deception, is what investigators said.
And he said, like for whatever reason, he stuck out for what he said. That he was overcompensating for everything he said. He never denied, like I said, I did not kill him, right? He was given reasons to why he couldn't. So he was saying, I'm too nice of a person, or I'm not that kind of person, I couldn't do that. Right. Look, ask people, they'll say I'm not that kind of person, but he never said, I didn't do it.
Now, let me just add here quickly, sorry. Mm-hmm. While he was questioned, he was in a Florida prison
for trafficking.
For drug trafficking. He said, he enjoyed indulging in clothes, jewelry, watches, shoes. So he was trafficking oxy. So, sorry, I just had to add that in there.
Yeah. So, he's not a good person. There's other things, and there's been a path of this stuff going on. And what really tipped off for him to be, I think, looked at heavier again after they started doing some investigation, is one of the attorneys for Josh Askin had said, you need to look at him in particular.
Right. The attorney for Josh Askin was Keith Greer. And like Harrison said, he has said, you need to look into this Greg Rosenberg.
And previously, while being investigated as well, Greg had been asked, and he said, is there anything in your room or the Smith's room that will connect you to this murder? And they said he took like a 10, 20 second pause.
And that's a long time. If you're sitting there, you're asked a question and you just go.
You just kind of blank out.
And they said he looked like scared,
frantic, like mind. Racing. So he's probably running back through the events.
Like, did I leave anything?
Right. So and then he quickly answered no. Right. So he was very, and he was adamant. We watched something and looked into some of the details where he said someone hurt him. So he admits he thinks this is a foul play situation. But
but he didn't seem genuine. If you would watch that, it was the 48 hours missing at sea. He just appeared nonchalant, like, oh, I couldn't have done it. It wasn't me. Yeah, he was hurt. Something happened. And they actually, do you remember they filmed the day after George went missing? They were sitting there all eating lunch, and someone had filmed, they were saying that George parachuted over the balcony. And then
they're kind of like joking and laughing about his death. And
Greg stood up and basically made a mockery saying, I told you I was gangster. Like, what is the necessity of that? I mean, and when we watched the jailhouse interview, I mean, this guy, you can tell he's not the smartest crayon in the crayon box.
And so when someone that's directly involved with what's going on says, I think someone was hurt. Oh, but I don't know anything. I don't know who did it. I wasn't involved.
Right. You're not offering up any information.
It's just
no. So this whole thing, there's somebody knows something, multiple people know something. So Michael Latardis was the captain on the ship at this time. He's the one that made the decision to, keep sailing and whatnot. He basically said it was an accident. He fell overboard. He drowned, but he wasn't there. I mean, I know you can make those assumptions and say, based on the evidence, but they didn't really collect much evidence.
And it was an opinion at that point. He came forward like that was what it was.
Was fact. Yeah, exactly. So the FBI did close this case in 2015 due to lack of evidence. And I don't know if it's because Royal Caribbean will not release the footage. Yeah. That's why there's no evidence. I mean,
but there was like
97,000. How is that lack of evidence? And you know what? To this day, collected. The family is still fighting. They have $100,000 reward. So if you have any additions or any suggestions or any thoughts with this, there's a Justice for George Facebook page that you can go to. And you know what? Like we touched on before, we're going to do another cruise ship missing person that's very well known, but there's not enough laws and regulations and based on like jurisdiction. Is it federal? Is it, where did it happen? And, they can't prove that it happened at this latitude, this longitude. Whose jurisdiction is it? So it's just nobody
investigates
it.
Is the area of the sea to the closest country where they're at, and also where the ship is from. So there's different things. The flag that it's flying, so whatever port it comes from.
So the theories, were they attacked? Were they drugged? Were they mugged? Did George fall off accidentally? I mean, they're still all out there. Again, like we say all the time, there's a lot of investigating that you can do on top of what we have provided as far as the information.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's left open to, your own imagination, basically. So, Jen did end up settling, what we heard behind the backs of George's parents, with Royal Caribbean. They did make a suit, and supposedly she settled so that George, his family, they couldn't really question these witnesses anymore because they had already settled. So this poor family doesn't have their son. And I know Jen lost her husband. Okay, that sucks. That's awful. But to lose a son, and she settled. So, I mean, it's basically a nil point at this time. So it's really sad. I would hate to lose someone in that fashion. All right. Thank y'all for watching this George Smith case.
Thank you so much. And like before, don't forget, we need you to subscribe. We haven't done it yet. We are trying to grow the channel, so make sure you subscribe. Share it if you'd like to. Like and comment. It all helps out. We are trying to, like I said, grow. So make sure you're part of the family and hit the subscribe button.
And if you have any suggestions, again, we're always up for new cases.
Thank you.
Thank you.